You open a window in your home, and immediately you hear your neighbor's wind chimes. Then the distant hum of traffic, a dog barking 3 houses down, a lawnmower starting up somewhere you cannot see. The sounds were always there. But the moment you opened the window, they rushed in, and now you cannot unhear them. This is what happens when you open the app. You did not create the comparing mind by looking at your phone. It was already there, quiet, waiting. The way those sounds were waiting outside your window. But the screen is a kind of opening, and through it pours a steady stream of other lives, other faces, other accomplishments, other vacations and meals and moments that are not yours, and the mind begins its work. It measures, it ranks, it notices what you have and what you lack. It sees someone's clarity and feels your own confusion. It sees someone's ease and registers your struggle. The mind is not doing this to punish you. It is simply doing what minds do. Comparing is one of its oldest functions. How else would you have learned what was safe to eat, or who to trust, or where danger lived? The mind compares to survive, but survival and scrolling are not the same thing. When you compare yourself to someone standing next to you, there is context. You see their fatigue. You hear the hesitation in their voice. You know something of their story. The comparison is still painful, but it is tethered to something real. When you compare yourself to an image on a screen, you are comparing your inner experience to someone else's outer presentation. You are comparing your rough draft to their final edit, and the mind does not always know the difference. So the ache begins. Feel it in the chest, a tightness, a small collapse, or maybe it is heat, a flare of envy or resentment, or maybe it is fog. A sense that you are falling behind in a race you did not know you had entered. The feeling is old, older than the phone, older than the internet, but the speed has changed. You can feel inadequate 12 times in 2 minutes. You can lose your ground between one breath and the next. And here is what the Buddha saw long before there were screens. He saw that suffering does not come from the world itself. It comes from the way the mind grabs at the world, craving what is pleasant, pushing away what is unpleasant, and in the middle comparing, always comparing. This moment to that moment, this self to that self, as if there were a fixed position you were supposed to occupy, and you keep missing it. But there is no fixed position. You are not a statue. You are more like weather, changing, shifting, responsive. And when you compare yourself to someone else's weather, you lose sight of your own sky. The window is still open. The sounds are still coming in, but you can notice them now. You can notice the tightness in your chest without believing the story it tells. You can notice the thought that says you are not enough and see it as a thought, not a fact, not a command, just a movement in the mind. The way a cloud moves across the sky and does not stay. This is not about fixing yourself. It is not about becoming someone who never compares. It is about seeing the comparing when it happens, feeling the contraction, and not adding a second layer of suffering on top of it. Not saying, I should not feel this way. Not saying, I am weak for being affected. Just noticing, just breathing, just letting the window be open without letting the sounds define the room. You might close the app. You might not. That is not the deepest question. The deepest question is whether you can stay present with what arises, whether you can meet the ache with awareness instead of reaction, whether you can return to your own breath, your own body, your own small patch of ground, and let that be enough for now. The comparing mind is not your enemy. It is part of the weather. It will come and it will go. But you do not have to live inside it. You do not have to let it name you. You You can step back from the window. You can feel your feet on the floor. You can notice that you are here, breathing, alive, not better or worse than anyone else, just here. And from that place, we can begin to look more closely at what happens when the mind meets the screen. There is a particular moment that lives in the body before it lives anywhere else. You know it. You open the app, any app, the one you check most often. And before you have even registered what you are seeing, something shifts inside you. The chest tightens, the shoulders rise slightly. There is a small contraction, a drawing inward, as if you have just been told bad news. And then your eyes land on the images, the words, the numbers, and you understand why your body moved first. Someone else's moment looks bigger than yours. Someone else's life appears to contain more light. This is not a failure of character. This is not weakness or envy in the moral sense. This is what happens when the mind meets comparison, and it begins not in thought but in sensation. The Buddha spoke of this movement, not in the language of social media. He lived in a different world, but in the recognition that when you see another's gain, something stirs in your own heart. The word translated sometimes as envy or jealousy, but what he was really pointing to was simpler, the immediate, almost involuntary response of the heart when it perceives that someone else has what you lack. The gain is theirs. The lack is yours, and the gap between these two facts creates a kind of friction in the chest. What is remarkable is that this friction is not primarily a thought. It is a felt experience. It is physical before it becomes a story. You might notice the tightness, the slight heaviness, the way your breathing becomes a little shallower. These sensations arrive in the body like ripples spreading across a still pond. Someone throws a stone, the image of another's success, another's beauty, another's ease, and the surface of your attention, which was calm a moment ago, becomes disturbed. One ripple overlaps another. Each comparison creates its own disturbance, and soon you are not looking at a still surface anymore. You are looking at chaos. But here is what is worth observing. The pond itself does not change. The water is still water. The disturbance is real. The ripples are real. But they are not the nature of the pond. They are movements across it, and they pass. When you open the app, your nervous system does not know the difference between a real threat and a perceived gap. It only knows that something has shifted. Someone else's gain registers in your body as your loss. Not logically, not as a conclusion you have reasoned your way to, but as a sensation, a contraction, a small, almost invisible flinching away from what you are seeing. This is where awareness begins, not with judgment of the feeling, not with trying to fix it or transcend it, but with the simple act of noticing. This is what is happening right now. This tightness in my chest, this slight closing of the throat, this particular quality of smallness that arrived the moment I looked at the screen. Most people at this point do one of two things. They either push the feeling away, close the app quickly, distract themselves, tell themselves they should not feel this way, or they lean into it. They scroll further, as if the answer to the discomfort lies in seeing more of what caused it. But there is a third possibility. There is the possibility of simply staying with the sensation long enough to know it fully. Not to indulge it, not to act on it, but to feel it completely, the way you might feel a wave move through your body if you were standing in the ocean. The wave comes. It has a shape, a texture, a beginning and an end. And if you do not resist it, if you do not try to escape it, you begin to understand its nature. It is not solid. It is not permanent. It is a movement, and like all movements, it passes. The comparing mind is like this. It is not a flaw in you. It is not something that needs to be eliminated through effort or willpower. It is a movement, a ripple. And the moment you begin to notice the physical sensation of comparison, the exact moment you feel it arise in your chest, you have already stepped back far enough to see it as what it is, a passing response, not a truth about who you are or what you lack. This noticing is not something you have to do perfectly. You do not have to catch the comparison at the exact instant it begins. Even if you notice it 5 minutes later, even if you notice it after you have already scrolled through dozens of images, the capacity to feel where the comparison lives in your body is still available. It is always available. The body does not lie. It does not pretend. When you turn your attention toward the chest, toward the throat, toward the belly, you will find the exact place where the comparing mind has created a disturbance. And in that finding, something shifts, not because you have solved the problem or defeated comparison, but because you have moved from being lost in the story that someone else is better, that you are lacking, that the gap is real and permanent, to being present with the simple, direct experience of what is actually happening in this moment, a sensation, a movement, a ripple across the surface of awareness. There is a particular kind of hunger that lives in the fingers. You know it. The small restlessness that reaches for the phone, not quite knowing what it is looking for. You open an app, maybe the one where people share moments, or the one where they share thoughts, or the one where they share versions of themselves that have been edited and lit and considered, and for a moment there is a sense of reaching toward something. Connection maybe, or relief, or just the feeling that something is happening somewhere and you might be part of it. Then you scroll. The images pass. The captions pass. The small red notifications appear and disappear. And after some minutes, or many minutes, you close the app. And there is a peculiar hollowness, not the restfulness of having eaten, not the warmth of having spoken to a friend, but a kind of flatness, a sense of having looked for something and found only the shape of it. This is not a failure of character. This is not laziness or weakness. This is something much simpler and much more human. It is the mind making a mistake, a very old mistake. The mistake of confusing the image of the thing with the thing itself. Think of being very hungry. Your stomach is empty. You are genuinely in need of food. And someone shows you photographs, beautiful photographs. A warm loaf of bread, the crust golden and cracking. A bowl of soup, steam rising from it. Fruit ripe and glistening. You look at these images. For a moment, there is something. The mind recognizes the shape of nourishment. But as you keep looking, something else happens. The hunger does not ease. It sharpens. Because you are not eating bread. You are looking at the idea of bread. And the body knows the difference. This is what the old teachings called craving. Not desire itself. Desire is natural, it moves us toward what we need. But craving is what happens when we mistake the representation for the reality. When we reach for the image instead of the thing. On social media, you are looking at photographs of other people's lives. You are reading captions. You are seeing moments that have been selected, framed, filtered. And there is something in you that reaches toward these images as if they were real connection. As if seeing a friend's face on a screen were the same as sitting with them. As if reading someone's words about their joy or their struggle were the same as being in their presence. But it is not the same, and the body knows this. The nervous system knows this. You can scroll through images of human faces for an hour and still feel alone. The hunger is real. The desire to feel connected is real. But what you are reaching for, what you are hoping to find in that app, is not actually there. It is a photograph of connection, a caption about it, a curated version of someone's experience that is not the experience itself. And here is where something interesting happens. The more you look at the photographs when you are hungry, the hungrier you become. Each image triggers the recognition of what you need, but does not provide it. So you keep scrolling, hoping that the next image will be different, that this time something will satisfy. But satisfaction does not come from images. It comes from the thing itself. This is not a problem with social media alone. This is a very old pattern. We have always been capable of mistaking the symbol for the real, the menu for the meal, the map for the territory. But social media is designed to make this mistake easier. It is designed to keep you reaching, because each reach is an engagement, and each engagement is what the system is built to capture. But you can begin to see this clearly. You can notice, before you even open the app, what you are actually hoping to find. Are you hoping to feel less alone? Then connection is what you need, and a photograph of a friend is not connection. Are you hoping to feel that something is happening, that you are part of something? Then belonging is what you need, and a notification is not belonging. This is not a judgment. It is simply clarity, and clarity is where change begins. Before you reach for the phone, you might pause, just for a moment. And you might ask yourself, what am I hungry for right now? Not what will I do to pass the time, but what am I actually seeking? What is the real hunger? If it is connection, notice that, feel it, and then ask, will this app provide it? Will looking at images of other people make me feel genuinely connected? Or will it show me the shape of connection while leaving the hunger untouched? You might be surprised at how often the answer is clear. How often, when you pause and ask directly, you already know. You know that what you need is not there, and in that knowing something shifts. The reaching becomes less automatic. The hunger remains, but you are no longer mistaking the photograph for the meal. This is not about never opening the app. It is about seeing clearly what you are doing when you do. About recognizing the difference between the image and the thing. About letting your own wisdom tell you what is actually nourishing and what only looks like nourishment from a distance. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from holding a shape. You know it, perhaps without naming it. It lives in the shoulders. It lives in the choice of which photo to post, which caption to write, which version of your day to offer to the world. The version that looks like you have it together. The version that looks like you are thriving, or at least managing. The version that is not quite you, but close enough that no one notices the difference. This shape you hold, this curated self, requires constant maintenance. A sandcastle built at the edge of the tide. Every wave that comes, you must rebuild it. Every comment, every like, every silent scroll of someone else's life requires you to reinforce the walls. The tide does not stop. It comes in and out, and you are there with your hands, shaping and reshaping, trying to keep the structure from dissolving back into sand. The exhaustion is not from the building itself. It is from the belief that the sandcastle is you. In Zen, there is a phrase, your original face. The face you had before your parents were born. Not a poetic riddle, exactly, though it sounds like one. It points to something simpler. It points to the you that exists before any image, before any curation, before the mind learned to perform. The you that is not constructed. But social media does something particular to the mind. It gives the constructed self a stage, an audience, a constant feedback loop. You begin to believe that the version you are showing is the version you are. You begin to maintain it like a job. You check it. You adjust it. You defend it when it is questioned. You feel relief when it is affirmed. You feel a small death when it is ignored. The comparing mind feeds on this. It cannot help itself. It sees another sandcastle, more elaborate, more carefully tended, more admired. And something in you contracts. You are not building the right castle. You are not showing the right version. You are falling behind in the endless work of self-presentation. What is happening here is subtle. You are not just curating your life. You are fragmenting yourself. Part of you is the performer. Part of you is the audience watching the performer. Part of you is the judge of whether the performance is good enough. And underneath it all, there is a part that is simply aware. That part is not constructed. It does not perform. It does not compare. It simply sees. This is what the Zen teaching points to. The face you show the world is not your original face. Not because the shown face is false. It contains real elements of you. But because it is only one angle, held in place, maintained against the current of life. It is not the whole of what you are, and more importantly, it is not stable. It cannot be. Nothing that requires constant maintenance can be stable. The tide always comes. The comparing mind thrives in this instability. It must. Because if the sandcastle is you, then every wave is a threat. Every other castle is evidence that you are doing it wrong. Every moment when you are not maintaining the image is a moment when you are failing. But what if you sat with this for a moment? Not to fix it, not to become a better curator, but simply to see it clearly, to notice which version of yourself you were performing today. This is not an abstract exercise. It is something you can do right now, or whenever you have a few minutes of quiet. Sit with your eyes closed or soft and downward. Let your attention settle into your body. Feel the weight of you in the chair. Feel your breath moving in and out. There is no performance in this. The breath does not care if anyone is watching. Now gently bring to mind the day. Not the whole day at once. Just the moments when you were aware of being seen. Or moments when you were aware of how you might be seen. Perhaps it was when you were choosing what to wear. Perhaps it was when you were writing a message. Perhaps it was when you were scrolling and felt the small sting of comparison. Perhaps it was simply the background awareness that you are a person with a reputation, an image, a version that exists in the minds of others. Notice what shape you took in those moments, not to judge it, not to change it, simply to see it. See the shoulders rising slightly. See the careful word choice. See the smile that is a little brighter than what you feel. See the part of you that stepped back and watched yourself perform. And then notice something else. Notice that there is a part of you that is aware of all of this. The part that sees the performance. That part is not performing, it is simply aware. It is not being curated. It is not being compared. It is not being maintained. This awareness is not a thing you have to build. It is not another castle to maintain. It is already here. It is the one who notices the tide coming, the one who sees the sand dissolving, the one who is not afraid of the water. When you rest in this space, the space between the performed self and the one who is aware, something begins to shift. Not because you have done something right, but because you have stopped doing something wrong. You have stopped trying to be the sandcastle. You have remembered that you are the ocean. There is a particular kind of suffering that lives in the space between what you see and what you tell yourself about what you see. It is not the image itself. It is the story that arrives almost before the image is finished loading. You scroll. A photograph appears. Someone is sitting in light that seems to know exactly how to find them. Their face is turned towards something you cannot see. The composition is perfect. And somewhere in the same moment, so fast you might not notice it happening, your mind has already begun its translation. It has already whispered, "This is what you are not. This is what you lack. This is the distance between them and you." The image itself is neutral, light and shadow, a human form, pixels arranged. But the mind does not stop there. The mind is a mirror, yes, but not the kind that simply reflects. It is a mirror that keeps what it reflects. It holds each image and immediately weaves it into a narrative about your own insufficiency. This is not a flaw in your character. This is how the comparing mind works. It is always looking for the gap, always measuring, always asking, "Where do I fall short?" The Buddha taught about this tendency long before screens existed. He called it the nature of the conditioned mind to create stories around what it perceives, to add layers of meaning, to turn a simple sight into a statement about self. But here is what is worth noticing: that translation, that story, is optional, not easy to stop, but optional. When you look at a photograph of someone else's life, you are not actually looking at their life. You are looking at a single frame, a moment that has been selected, arranged, lit, and edited. And then your mind takes that frame and uses it as evidence. Evidence of what they have. Evidence of what you do not. The comparing mind does not ask of, "Is this real? Is this the whole picture?" It simply accepts the frame as truth and builds a story on top of it. The Mahayana teachers spoke of something called clear seeing. Not seeing better or seeing more, but seeing without adding your own loneliness to what you perceive. Seeing the flower without making it mean something about the barrenness of your own garden. Seeing another person's moment without immediately converting it into a measure of your own lack. This is possible. Not because you are strong enough to stop thinking, but because you can learn to notice the moment when the translation happens. The moment when perception shifts into narrative. A mirror that reflects without keeping anything. This is what clear seeing resembles. Light comes, the mirror receives it. The light moves on. There is no hoarding, no interpretation, no accumulation of meaning. The mirror does not say, "This light is beautiful and I am dark." It simply reflects and then releases. You cannot become a mirror by force. You cannot command yourself to stop comparing. But you can become curious about the mechanism itself. You can begin to watch it work. The next time you find yourself looking at someone else's image, their moment, their achievement, their appearance, their life as it is being presented to you, you might try something small, not to change what you feel, not to become enlightened or detached, but simply to observe the process. Look at the image, let it be there, and then notice, what is the first thought that arrives? Not the second or third. The very first translation. Does it come as a word, a feeling in the chest, a sudden heaviness? Does it arrive as a comparison, or does it arrive as a story about yourself? You might see a photograph of someone in a place you have never been, and before you can think, you might feel, "I will never go there. I do not have the means. I am stuck." But notice, the image itself did not say that. The image is simply a place. The story came from you, from the part of your mind that is always looking for evidence of your own limitation. Or you might see a face and feel, they are more beautiful. They are more worthy of attention. I am less. Again, the image is only pixels. The comparison is something your mind added. When you notice this, when you actually see the moment the translation happens, something shifts. Not because you have judged yourself for comparing, not because you have forced yourself to think differently, but because you have seen the mechanism clearly. You have watched the mirror try to keep something that was never meant to be kept. The practice is not to stop scrolling, not to become someone who never feels envy or longing. It is simply to look at one image, just one, and observe it without immediately naming what it means about you. Let the image be what it is, a photograph, a frame, a selection of light and shadow. See if you can perceive it without the story arriving quite so fast. See if you can create even a small space between the seeing and the narration. This space is where clarity lives, not because you have become better at controlling your thoughts, but because you have learned to see without keeping, to perceive without translating everything into a measure of yourself. The image will still be there. Your mind will still be a mirror. But you will have noticed at least once that you do not have to hold on to what the mirror shows you. For social media and the comparing mind, you scroll. A face appears. Someone you know or someone you don't. They are smiling in a place you've never been. The light is golden. Their arm is around someone. And something happens inside you, not all at once. First a small tightening, then a thought they have what I don't. Then another, I should have that. Then another, why don't I? The phone is still in your hand. The image is still there, but something has shifted. The joy in that photograph, which is real, which belongs to them, has become evidence against you. Proof that your life is smaller, proof that you are falling behind. This is the comparing mind at work, and it arrives with such speed, such certainty, that it feels like truth. It feels like sight, but something quieter is happening underneath. The Buddha taught that envy is not actually about the other person. It is the mind's way of turning away from its own suffering. Let that land for a moment. Not as blame, not as something you've done wrong, but as an observation about how the mind protects itself. When you feel that tightening at the sight of someone else's joy, something in you is hurting. Not because of their joy, but because you are already in pain. Perhaps the pain of loneliness or doubt, or a quiet sense that your life is not enough. And the mind, in its ancient wisdom, says don't look at that. Look there instead. Look at what they have. Look at what you lack. Look at the distance between here and there. It is a redirect, a turning away. And it feels urgent because the underlying pain is real. Imagine a plant in a dim corner of a room. It is not thriving. Its leaves are thin. Its growth is slow. And then, through the window across the way, you see another plant. It is in full sun. Its leaves are thick and green and reaching upward. The plant in the dim corner cannot help but strain toward that light. It bends. It leans. It tries to grow in the direction of what it sees. But the light it is reaching toward is not available here. The reaching itself becomes exhausting. The plant cannot access what it sees, and it cannot accept what it has. This is what happens in the mind when we compare. We see the light in someone else's window and begin to strain toward it. We cannot reach it, but we also cannot stop reaching. And in the reaching, we stop noticing what is actually here. The air around us, the soil beneath us, the small growth that is possible right now in this light with what we have. The comparing mind is not evil. It is not a flaw in you. It is a very old survival mechanism. Once, comparing ourselves to others told us whether we were safe, whether we belonged, whether we would survive. The mind learned to scan the group constantly. Am I like them? Am I different? Am I enough? This served a purpose. But now the group is infinite, and the images are curated, and the mind is still scanning, still comparing, still asking if you are enough. Except now there is always someone with more light, always someone in a better window, and the reaching never stops. Here is what is true: you cannot see the full reality of anyone else's life. You see the photograph, you see the caption. You do not see the argument that happened before the photo. You do not see the doubt. You do not see the cost. You do not see the ways they are also struggling, also uncertain, also wondering if they are enough. You see the light. You do not see the room. And yet, knowing this does not always stop the tightening. Knowledge alone does not dissolve envy, because envy is not a problem of the mind that thinks. It is a sensation in the body. It is a contraction. It is a turning away from what is here. So when envy arises, and it will arise, because you are human and you live in a world of images, there is something you can do that is simpler than arguing with yourself or trying to think your way out. When you notice that tightening, that small collapse inward, pause. You do not need to stop using the phone. You do not need to be ashamed. Simply notice what is happening. The envy is there. It is real. It is a visitor, not a verdict about who you are or what your life means. Place one hand on your heart. Feel the place where the tightening lives. It might be in your chest. It might be in your throat. It might be a weight in your belly. Just notice where the sensation is, and then breathe with it. Not to change it, not to make it go away, but to be present with it. To say, without words, I feel this. This is here right now. This is what is happening. As you breathe, something shifts. Not because you have fixed anything, but because you have stopped turning away. You have stopped reaching toward the light in another window. You have turned toward the pain that was already here, the pain that the comparing mind was trying to hide. And in that turning, the envy begins to lose its grip, not because you have defeated it, but because you have met it as what it actually is, a messenger. A signal that something in you needs attention. A sign that you are suffering, and that suffering is asking you to come home. To look at what is actually here, to breathe with what is true. There is a particular kind of restlessness that lives in the reaching hand. You know it. The moment you finish scrolling through one image, one comment, one small story of someone else's life, there is already a pull toward the next one. Not because you have decided to keep going, because something in the mind believes that the next refresh will bring what this one did not. This is not a failure of willpower. It is the shape of a very old confusion meeting a very new tool. The confusion is this: we are searching for something stable in a place where nothing stable exists. We scroll as if the next post will be different from the last one, as if satisfaction lives in the feed itself, waiting to be found. We refresh the way someone might try to hold running water in their hands, cupping and cupping again, never quite understanding why the water will not stay. The water is not the problem. The hands are not the problem. The problem is the hope that water can be held this way. When you scroll, you are not really looking for information. You are looking for a moment of rest. A moment where the mind stops its small, constant reaching. And for a second, sometimes you find it. A post moves you slightly. An image catches something in you. There is a brief settling. Then it passes. The image moves up the screen. Your eye moves to the next thing. And the reaching begins again. This is impermanence. Not as an abstract idea, as the actual texture of your experience right now. In the early Buddhist teachings, there is a word anicca. It means that all things that come together will come apart. All forms that arise will pass. This is not sad. It is simply what is true. A post appears. It is seen. It is scrolled past. It is gone. The feeling it gave you. The small spark of interest. The moment of recognition. This too appears and dissolves. And the mind, not understanding this, keeps searching for one that will not. You can feel this directly. You do not need to believe it. The next time you are on the feed, notice something very simple, how quickly each post loses its pull. You see it. It seems interesting, or beautiful, or upsetting. You feel the tug of it, then you scroll. And immediately, not after hours or days, but immediately, it no longer matters. The post you were just looking at might as well have never existed. Your attention has moved on. The feeling has moved on. The post itself is still there, but it is dead to you now. This happens every single time. And yet the mind continues to believe that the next one will be different. That the next one will not dissolve the moment you look away. It is like trying to hold running water in your hands. You know, even as you do it, that the water will slip through your fingers. But you do it anyway. You do it again. You do it again. Not because you have forgotten that water cannot be held, but because in the moment of holding, there is a feeling of having something, and the mind prefers that feeling, the feeling of grasping, of reaching, of almost, to the simple acknowledgement that nothing here is meant to be held. The feed is designed to make this worse. It is designed to make the reaching automatic. Each refresh is easy. The next post appears instantly. The mind never has time to settle into the truth of what it just saw. There is no natural stopping point. The water is endless and your hands are always open. But the truth is still there. You can still see it. You can still feel it. The practice is not to stop using the feed. The practice is to notice, to bring a small, quiet attention to the moment when you scroll past something, to feel how quickly it becomes nothing. Not to judge yourself for scrolling, not to make it mean anything about your character or your discipline. Simply to watch, to see directly that every single post, no matter how beautiful, how upsetting, how interesting, loses its grip the moment it is no longer in front of you. When you notice this, something shifts. Not because you have learned a lesson, but because you have seen something true. You have seen that the reaching itself is based on a misunderstanding. The mind has been searching for stability in a place where stability is impossible. Not because you are weak, because stability is not there. It cannot be there. The feed is flowing water. Your hands cannot hold it. Not because your hands are not strong enough, because that is not what hands do with water. As you continue to use the feed, and you will because it is part of your life, this seeing can be there, not as a thought, as a quiet perception. The post appears, you feel the pull, you scroll, you notice the dissolution. You feel, in your own direct experience, the truth of impermanence, not as a concept, as something alive in your hands, in your eyes, in the small moment of reaching and releasing. This noticing is not rejection. It is not discipline. It is simply seeing clearly what is already happening. And when you see clearly what is already happening, the quality of your reaching changes. The grasping loosens, not because you have forced it to, but because you have finally understood what you were reaching for. There is a particular moment that many people know without naming it. You are looking at a screen. Your thumb moves, or your finger scrolls, or you are reading something someone else has written about their day, their thoughts, their small victories, and then something shifts, a sound reaches you, or the light in the room changes. or you simply pause. And in that pause, you realize you have no idea how long you have been there. Not just the time, though that is part of it, but the place, the actual room around you, the chair you are sitting in, the temperature of the air, whether the light is coming from the window or from the lamp. These ordinary facts of where you actually are have become somehow invisible while you were away. This is not a failure of attention. It is something quieter and more common than that. It is the nature of how the comparing mind works. When you are looking at images of other people's lives, or reading about their thoughts, or measuring your own experience against theirs, you are not really in the room anymore. You are in a kind of boat, drifting in a current that has its own direction. The current is made of other people's moments, other people's versions of themselves, and the boat, your awareness, has drifted so far from shore that the shore itself has become hard to remember. The shore is still there. It was never going anywhere. The room you are in, with its particular light and its particular silence or sound, is still the room you are in. But while you were in the boat, looking at the current, the shore became abstract. It became a concept called later, or when I am done, or the real world, as if the real world is something that waits for you to finish with the screen. The Zen tradition speaks of this without drama. It simply says the ordinary world is always here, waiting for your return. Not judging your absence, not demanding that you come back. Just, the table is here, the wall is here. The sound of the house settling, or the traffic outside, or the hum of the refrigerator. These are here. They have been here the whole time. What happens when you drift in the boat is not that the shore disappears. It is that you stop noticing it. The comparing mind is very good at this. It is designed to notice differences, to measure, to rank. Is my life as interesting as theirs? Is my body as good? Is my work as meaningful? These questions are like a current. They pull your attention away from the direct fact of being alive right now in this particular place. And the longer you drift, the more normal the drifting becomes. The boat begins to feel like the only place you can be. But there is something important to understand about this drifting. It is not permanent. You cannot drift forever, even though it sometimes feels that way. The moment you become aware that you have drifted, that moment itself is the moment you can turn the boat around. You are already noticing. You are already here, in some part of yourself, because you are noticing that you were not here. That awareness is the beginning of return. The comparing mind does not need to be fought or rejected. It does not need to be punished. It simply needs to be set down the way you might set down something you were carrying without thinking about it. And then you need to notice what is actually in front of you, not as a discipline, not as something you should do, but as a relief, as a return to something solid. Close the app, just close it. There is no need to delete it or to make a grand gesture. Simply close it. And then, without rushing, notice 3 things you can actually see in the room around you. Not in your memory of the room, not in your idea of the room, but in the actual visual field right now. Perhaps it is the corner where the wall meets the ceiling. Perhaps it is a cup on a table, or a plant, or the way light falls on a particular surface. Perhaps it is something you have seen 1,000 times and never really looked at. The texture of fabric, the color of wood, the particular way a shadow falls. You are not trying to have a profound experience. You are not trying to prove anything to yourself. You are simply returning to shore. You are simply noticing that the boat has stopped drifting, and that solid ground is right here, exactly where it has always been. This is not dramatic. There is no flash of insight. There is just a quiet settling. Your eyes are in the room. Your body is in the chair. The air has a particular temperature. The light has a particular quality. And for a moment, or for several moments, there is no current pulling you away. There is just this, just here. And the comparing mind, which was so loud and so urgent, becomes very small and very quiet. Not because you made it quiet, but because you stopped feeding it. Because you came back to shore. The comparing mind will not disappear because you have listened to these words. It will arise again tomorrow, perhaps even before you fall asleep tonight. This is not failure. This is the nature of mind. What changes is not whether the comparison comes, but what you do when it arrives. Whether you believe it immediately, or whether you notice it as weather passing through. You might open the app again. You might see the same images that stirred restlessness an hour ago. But now there is a small gap, a breath of space between seeing and believing. In that gap, you are free. Not free from the image, free from the story it tried to tell about you. This freedom is quiet. It does not announce itself. It simply allows you to close the app without carrying the weight into the next room. It lets you see someone's curated joy without needing to measure your own. It permits the comparing mind to speak without giving it the final word. The practice is not to become someone who never compares. The practice is to become someone who notices, who pauses, who returns to the body and the breath, and the actual moment you are standing in. And in that return, something softens. You begin to see that the person in the post is also caught in their own comparing mind. That the image they shared is also a response to restlessness, to the same human hunger for enoughness. You are not separate from them. You are both turning toward the same light, both hoping to be seen. This is where metta begins. Not as a grand gesture, but as a small release of the fist. May I be free from comparison. May I see clearly. May I rest in what is here. And then, gently, the same wish extended outward. May you also be free. May you also rest. May the image you posted bring you the peace you were seeking. Metta does not require that you follow them or like their post. It does not ask you to perform kindness. It simply asks that you stop hardening your heart against them. Stop using their life as evidence of your lack. When you offer metta to someone you have envied, something inside you exhales. You can extend this further. To the algorithm that curates the feed. To the designers who built the endless scroll. To the executives who profit from your attention. May you also find peace. May you also be free from the suffering of grasping. This is not naive. This is the recognition that all beings are caught in the same web of craving and confusion. Metta does not excuse harm, but it refuses to meet harm with more harm. It meets the world with a softer gaze. And finally, metta toward yourself. Not as you wish you were, not as you compare yourself to be, but as you are right now. With the comparing mind still flickering, with the restlessness still present, with the longing still alive in your chest. May I be kind to this mind. May I be patient with this heart. May I see that I am enough, even as I feel insufficient. May I rest here, in this unmarked moment, without needing it to be different. You do not need to delete the app, though you might. You do not need to declare yourself healed, though something has shifted. You only need to remember that the comparing mind is not the deepest truth of who you are. Beneath the comparison is awareness. Beneath the restlessness is breath. Beneath the endless scroll is the life you are already living, quiet and unremarkable and whole. This is the life that does not need to be posted. The the life that does not need to be seen to be real, the life that continues whether anyone witnesses it or not. May you return to it often. May you find it waiting, patient and unhurried, beneath all the noise. And if you wish to continue sitting with these reflections, there are other explorations here. Other threads of the Dharma, other invitations to pause. But there is no urgency. The teachings will remain. Your own clarity will deepen in its own time. For now, let this be enough. May all beings be free from comparison. May all beings rest in their own presence. May all hearts soften toward themselves and each other. May you be at peace